Ever heard that saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree?
Hmm.
Well, today's deep dive takes us back thousands of years to a family drama
Okay.
that makes that saying feel unnervingly relevant. We're talking about King David.
Right.
Not as a legendary ruler, but as a father grappling with a scandal that rocks his entire house.
It's fascinating how this story,
Right.
tucked away in the book of Samuel,
Yeah.
still resonates with the kinds of power struggles and family conflicts we see play out today.
It really goes to show some things are timeless. We're going deep into chapters 13 through 15,
Okay.
focusing on the story of Amnon, Tamar, and Absalom.
Right.
Get ready for some intense emotions.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about betrayal, revenge, and the weight of family honor in ancient Israel.
What's important to remember is that this isn't just a juicy piece of gossip from the ancient world. It provides a window into a culture where family loyalty and social standing were everything.
Okay, so before we get into the thick of it, can you set the scene for us?
Sure.
Who are the main players in this drama?
So you've got King David, obviously a powerful figure, but we're seeing him through the lens of his family life. He has a daughter, Tamar, and two sons we'll be focusing on: Amnon, Tamar's half-brother, and Absalom, her full brother.
And right from the start, the text makes a point of highlighting Tamar's beauty,
Yes.
which unfortunately becomes central to the story, right?
Exactly. Amnon develops an unhealthy obsession with Tamar, described as an all-consuming infatuation. It's important to note that the text doesn't shy away from portraying the darkness of his desire. He's not pining away from afar. He's actively plotting to get close to her.
And he's got a partner in crime, right?
Right.
Tell us about Jonadab.
Jonadab, the cunning friend. He's the one who comes up with a plan, a rather manipulative one at that. Amnon pretends to be deathly ill, and when David comes to check on him, Amnon specifically requests that Tamar be the one to prepare his food and care for him.
Playing the sick card. Pretty crafty. But what's the significance of having Tamar take care of him? Is that unusual?
Very much so. Remember, in this time and place, a young, unmarried woman being alone with a man, especially her half-brother, would have been considered extremely inappropriate. It was about protecting her reputation, her family's honor.
So Amnon is using social customs and his own illness to create a situation where he can be alone with Tamar.
Precisely. And it works. Tamar, bound by custom and duty, enters Amnon's private chambers completely unaware of his true intentions. This scene is crucial because it highlights the power imbalance between them and sets the stage for a devastating violation of trust.
This is where things take a dark turn, to say the least. Amnon assaults Tamar, and the text doesn't sugarcoat it. We hear Tamar's pleas, her desperate attempts to reason with him, reminding him that what he's suggesting is forbidden. She even says, "Such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful sin."
That line from Tamar is crucial. It reveals that even in this ancient context, there is a sense that this act was morally wrong. It wasn't just about cultural taboo. It was about a breach of moral boundaries.
And yet, despite her pleas and her understanding of the societal consequences, Amnon forces himself on her. It's heartbreaking, especially because, as you said, she knows the shame and blame will fall squarely on her, not on him.
The text emphasizes Tamar's awareness of this. She understands that in their society, she is the one who will be considered ruined, not Amnon. It's a tragic illustration of the double standards women face.
And to make matters even more horrific, Amnon's feelings for her do a complete 180 after the assault.
You're right. The text describes it as a visceral hatred even stronger than his initial infatuation. He discards Tamar, throws her out, leaving her utterly devastated and alone. It's a chilling depiction of his cruelty and callousness. He took what he wanted with no regard for her well-being or her future.
And this is where Absalom enters the picture, right?
Yes.
He finds out what Amnon has done to his sister, and understandably, he is furious.
His reaction is more than just anger. It's a sense of outrage rooted in the cultural context of ancient Israel. To have a daughter of the king violated in this way was a grave offense, a stain on the entire family's honor. Absalom is duty-bound to seek justice for his sister.
So he's got this simmering rage. What does he do with it?
Well,
Does he confront Amnon directly, go straight to David, I'm on the edge of my seat?
you'll have to wait for Act 2 to find out. What we can say is that Absalom is strategic about his anger. He's not driven by a need for immediate revenge. He's playing a much longer game.
Ooh, this is getting good. I can already tell this family drama is about to get a whole lot more complicated.
Oh.
Okay, so we left off with Absalom consumed by rage, but playing it cool. What does he do with that slow burn of anger?
He waits 2 years, in fact. Can you imagine carrying that kind of fury for 2 years? Plotting the perfect moment for revenge.
Talk about patience. I can barely wait 2 minutes when someone cuts me off in traffic. What does Absalom ultimately do?
He sets a trap. Absalom throws a lavish sheep-shearing festival.
Hold on, sheep shearing. That sounds oddly specific for a revenge plot.
Not at all. These festivals were huge social events in ancient Israel. Think of it as a combination of a family reunion, a religious celebration, and a giant party all rolled into one. Refusing an invitation to such an event, especially from someone as powerful as Absalom, would be a major insult.
So Amnon wouldn't have suspected a thing. He'd practically be obligated to attend.
Exactly. And attend he does, completely oblivious to the danger lurking beneath the surface of the celebration.
This is giving me serious red wedding vibes. How does it all go down?
Absalom ensures that the wine flows freely, and when Amnon is thoroughly intoxicated, he gives the signal to his servants. They descend upon Amnon, killing him on the spot.
Wow. Talk about a family gathering gone very, very wrong. This must have been a devastating blow to King David.
Absolutely. Imagine being David in this moment. His daughter violated one son, now a murderer, and another son murdered. The text paints a poignant picture of his grief. It states that David tore his garments and lay on the ground. This isn't simply a king mourning a prince. It's a father utterly broken by the actions of his children.
It's easy to forget that beneath the titles and the power, these are real people experiencing unimaginable pain and loss.
And that pain complicates matters. David is undoubtedly furious with Absalom for taking justice into his own hands. But remember, David himself never punished Amnon for assaulting Tamar.
So there's this layer of guilt, perhaps, on David's part. His inaction led to this chain of violence.
It's certainly open to interpretation. But it's possible that David's silence after Tamar's assault played a role in fueling Absalom's need for vengeance. It speaks to the ripple effects of injustice, how failing to address a wrong can have unintended and tragic consequences.
This is a good reminder that sometimes the things we don't do can be just as impactful as the things we do, especially when it comes to matters of justice and family. So what happens to Absalom after the deed is done? Does he just stroll back to the palace?
Not quite. He flees, seeking refuge with a neighboring king. He's essentially an exile, banished for his crime of murder.
But wait, didn't you say that David never actually punished Amnon for what he did to Tamar? Why such a different reaction to Absalom?
It's complicated. On the one hand, David is a king. He understands the need for law and order, and murder is a serious crime, even if the victim was himself guilty of a terrible act. On the other hand, David is also a father. And it's clear that he still loves Absalom despite everything that's happened.
So we've got this heartbroken father who has banished his son, a son he still loves. What happens next?
Yeah.
Is there any coming back from this?
This is where the story takes another fascinating turn. Enter Joab, David's loyal general, a man known for his cunning. He recognizes the unspoken longing in David's heart, that deep-seated paternal love that exile hasn't extinguished.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does Joab do?
He devises a rather ingenious plan to manipulate David into allowing Absalom to return. He finds a woman from the town of Tekoa known for her wisdom and eloquence and coaches her on a fabricated tale of loss and revenge within her own family.
A parable with a purpose. Tell me more.
This woman, playing her part, perfectly presents her story to David, pleading for mercy and understanding for a son who has killed his brother in a moment of passion. She never once mentions Absalom directly, but the parallels to David's own situation are impossible to miss.
This Joab is a crafty one. I bet David saw right through it.
David was no fool. He recognized the manipulation, understood that Joab was pulling the strings. But here's the thing about good stories. They have a way of sneaking past our defenses, appealing to our emotions even when we know better.
So David's heart was touched, even though he knew it was a setup.
Yeah.
What did he do?
He allowed himself to be moved. He saw in the woman's story a reflection of his own internal conflict. The longing for his son, the struggle to reconcile justice with forgiveness. David grants Absalom permission to return to Jerusalem.
That's a huge step. Did they have a tearful reunion? Was all forgiven?
Not quite. David, perhaps still hurt and uncertain, allows Absalom back into the city but refuses to see him face to face. Absalom is back, but the shadow of his actions and his father's wounded heart hang heavy over him.
This is far from a happy ending, more like a pause before the next act. What happens when you have a banished but not banished prince back in the picture? So Absalom is back in Jerusalem walking this tightrope between being forgiven and not quite being welcomed back into the fold. What happens when you have a prince living in that kind of limbo?
Well, you have to remember, Absalom wasn't just any prince. He's described in the text as incredibly charismatic, even a bit of a heartthrob.
Oh, really? Give me the details.
The book of Samuel goes out of its way to mention his good looks. One passage even says, "In all Israel, there was no one as handsome as Absalom, so highly praised."
Okay, so he's easy on the eyes. But how does that play into this whole power struggle? I mean, good looks can only get you so far right.
You'd be surprised. Absalom starts leveraging his charm to his advantage. He positions himself as a man of the people, the one who listens to their grievances, the one who understands their frustrations with the current regime.
Which is, of course, his father's regime.
Exactly. He sets himself up near the city gate, a place where people would go for legal hearings and judgments. And he starts holding court, so to speak, listening to their complaints, offering sympathy and solutions.
He's playing the long game again, isn't he?
Mhm.
Building a base of support, turning public opinion in his favor. It's a classic political strategy.
Precisely. And it works. People are drawn to him. They see him as approachable, empathetic. A stark contrast to David, who by this point has become somewhat isolated, perhaps withdrawn after all the family drama.
So Absalom is out there winning hearts and minds. What does David make of all this?
Word gets back to David about Absalom's growing popularity. And let's just say he's not thrilled. He realizes that this isn't just his son acting out, it's a full-blown threat to his throne.
This family feud just went up a level. It's a power struggle of epic proportions.
And it's all the more poignant because it's father against son. It's a battle for a kingdom, yes. But it's also a struggle for love, loyalty, and the legacy of a family fractured by tragedy.
So what does David do? Does he fight fire with fire, raise an army, and confront Absalom head on?
He's faced with a heart-wrenching decision. He could fight back, but that would mean waging war against his own son, plunging his kingdom into a bloody civil war. And remember, as much as David is known for his military strength, he's also deeply affected by the emotional weight of this situation.
So what's the alternative? Just hand over the keys to the kingdom.
David chooses a different path, a path of heartbreaking sacrifice. He decides to flee Jerusalem to abandon his own capital city, rather than engage in a war against his own flesh and blood.
Wow, the king walking away from his own city. That's a powerful image. What did that tell us about David's state of mind?
It speaks volumes about his internal conflict. He's a father heartbroken by his son's betrayal, but he's also a leader who understands the devastating consequences of a civil war. By fleeing, he avoids bloodshed, but at a cost. He's essentially forced into exile by his own son.
This story took some unexpected turns. We started with a family drama, then dove into a tale of revenge, and ended up in the midst of a power struggle for an entire kingdom. What's the takeaway for our listener? What can we learn from this ancient tale that's still so relevant today?
I think it reminds us that power, especially within families, can be both a blessing and a curse. It can be used to protect, but also to manipulate and control. We see how silence and inaction can have far-reaching consequences, how the wounds of betrayal can fester and erupt in unexpected ways. But ultimately, this story also highlights the enduring power of love and the agonizing choices it can force us to make, even amidst unimaginable heartbreak and loss.
This deep dive into the House of David has been quite a journey. We've witnessed the devastating effects of lust and revenge, explored the complexities of family ties, and grappled with the weight of leadership in the face of unimaginable challenges. It leaves us with much to ponder, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And perhaps the most lingering question is this. Was Absalom's pursuit of power of revenge worth the destruction it wrought upon his family and his kingdom? It's a question that echoes throughout history and resonates in our own lives today. What sacrifices are we willing to make in the pursuit of justice or ambition? And how do we navigate the delicate balance between loyalty and what's truly right, especially when it comes to the bonds of family? These are questions worth pondering as we navigate our own complex relationships and the often challenging choices life throws our way.
This episode has given us all a lot to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a timeless tale of family loyalty, betrayal, and the weight of power. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the stories that shape our world.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.